Hello, and welcome to the Black Doctors Talk podcast. I'm Dr. Kimberly West, host for this episode and member of the Black Doctoral Network. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Deanna Bond, who is a research psychologist and educational consultant with more than 20 years of experience. Welcome, Dr. Bond. It's a pleasure to speak with you today.
Thank you, Dr. West. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So to start our conversation, I would like for you to start by telling our viewers and our listeners a little bit about your background. Where does it all begin for you?
Okay, so for me, I was born and raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I was raised by my mother, and I live with her and my three sisters. My father was incarcerated, so he currently is serving life in prison. So at a very young age, we were taught to have faith in God, and education was always important for us. So in order to, deal with a lot of things we dealt with, not having my father around, I always used performing arts as a channel to do some self-expression and to channel just my emotions from a really early age. So my career started off actually doing performing arts programs in the community for my youth, for youth in the community. And then I ended up working with a prevention program who worked with students who were identified as juveniles, but prior, instead of sending them to programs, they would put them in prevention programs. So I ran an after school performing arts program. And I really got interested in it because it was during the time I was in undergrad at Temple University to get my degree in psychology. And because I worked so well with the young people, I was offered a case manager position to work with the students, early on, like I said, in my undergrad track. And then once I graduated, I was actually given my own program to do some workforce development for youth, which was a really interesting program because, again, these students were in a community that obviously they needed some supports. And, fresh out of college, I was ready to take on the opportunity. And then I decided that, I wanted to get into more mental health just because I did get a degree in psychology. I wanted to just see what other options were available to me. So I started working with students who were on the autism track spectrum. And, we wanted to just make sure that students were receiving the supports they needed in their home and school environment. So I did some case management work there. I later decided to move on to a program who worked with juveniles that were coming back to their homes from placement, back into school and their communities. And as I worked with that population, I saw how much they struggled transitioning. So I decided to go back and get my master's degree in psychology, specifically in counseling psychology, school psychology, school counseling. And I wanted to get on the other side of the work of not necessarily working to push them back in, but be that person that either could help prevent them from, ending in the system or just being that support system when they came back. So I became a guidance counselor and I really enjoyed being there. And my team and I, we leveraged social emotional learning as much as we could and try to build, relationships with community partners to really support the students on the social emotional and student support services side. Later decided to go get my PhD, got some leadership opportunities to move away from direct service, but actually provide, I was a director in providing technical assistance and coaching transition schools that work with students that were overaged and unaccredited. And then from there, I just decided, it was important for me to build on what I've learned as a practitioner and then build on what I've learned as a researcher to get in the community and not only support students, but support the adults that are working with them. So I now have my PhD in psychology from Capella University.
Wow.
So a long journey, yes, 20 years plus. I wanted to get the feel of I just wanted to get an idea to see how the field was in psychology and where it would land me. So it's been important for me to stay connected with young people, but as I've transitioned in a lot of roles, I see that a lot of adults need as much support as possible.
Yeah, it's always interesting how those, younger experiences kind of roll
Right.
into our adult lives.
Yes.
You have an organization or a company that you founded called Bond Consulting Group. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you do with your group?
Sure. So it's a consulting firm that I have just, started in 2019. As I was finishing up my dissertation, and my dissertation was on the high school students' experiences with social emotional learning. I really wanted to get the perspective of young people. I worked in plenty of districts and plenty of schools where we talk about this big term, social emotional learning, and we package it into everything that we do. We put it on our vision and mission. We put it in some of our goals, but it's not often we get to talk to young people about their experiences with it. So as I started talking to young people just about how they were experiencing social emotional learning, if they even understood it, I realized how many adults I, would ask, and we don't necessarily take the time to apply those things in our own lives and in our own work. So I decided, like I said, right when I was finishing my dissertation, the importance of leveraging your own emotional intelligence, as we do our day-to-day work, as we interact with our colleagues, and even as we interact with our young people, strengthening those skills. So the idea was to start a consulting firm that would support adults in their own journey around emotional intelligence, and how do we leverage those skills, professional and and personally, but then also as a doctoral student, the journey of just getting a PhD. How do you manage your emotions through that experience, where you're writing, you're getting feedback, it could be very frustrating. So I took the opportunity to say the experience that I had, like how can I help other people, and then just talking to other colleagues, they felt like this could really be something that they could leverage. So the importance was, again, to start a consulting firm, again, that would help people navigate their and leverage emotional intelligence to advance in their educational and career journeys. So we offer one-on-one coaching, research support, so editing services to students if they need some support around editing, and now looking to expand into emotional intelligence leadership, team dynamics, and e-courses.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yes, thank
Um,
you.
what is your biggest accomplishment to date?
So my biggest accomplishment to date really was me obtaining my PhD. I was the first generation, uh, you know, family member to finish college. Like I had family members that would go to college and didn't necessarily get a chance to finish for various reasons, whether it's financial reasons or just life. So as a first generation college student, college graduate, it was important for me to just continue to push through. While I was receiving or getting first semester of my master's program, my mother was actually murdered. So it was just important that because my mom just instilled so much in us, I still talk to my father all the time, just pushing through and leveraging like my education to support young people in my community and other communities, and then adults as well. Like how do you just persevere through some traumatic situations but can continue to do what you want to do and living your purpose of what you're supposed to do. So my biggest accomplishment is becoming a doctor. I don't have any doctors in my family. I don't have many doctor friends. I mean, now in the working in the field, you build professional relationships, but my biggest accomplishment is becoming a doctor, and I'm very grateful, that I had the opportunity to do so.
Yes, yes, it is a good feeling. I
Yes.
can.
And to be a Black female doctor,
Yeah,
sometimes people don't want to acknowledge the PhDs and don't want to acknowledge, psychology degrees, but it's a degree and it's a big accomplishment.
it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
All right, so you've talked a little bit about some personal challenges you've experienced. What are some challenges that you've faced in your career, and how did you overcome them?
So just in my career, I think oftentimes we get into these roles. So for me, I've always tried to be strategic about the positions that I choose to go for and the ones I choose to take.
Mhm.
And try to see and make sure that they can build on to the next and build on to the next. Again, as an earlier practitioner, it was important for me to kind of gauge what was the best path for me to go, and then also too, just making sure that people didn't box me into a role that they wanted to see me in. So I've always been one to make sure that I, carve my own lane, learn from my experiences. But a lot of times when we're in roles and positions, sometimes leadership wants to decide things for you, and which is fine because you're coming on board, part of their company or part of their district. But there should be room for you to, build on leadership skills, build on the skills that you do have, to then advance in your career. So I've always tried to make sure that I don't get stuck in this box where people try to carve out the lane they want me to be in. And I learn from the experiences that I had to say, this is where I see myself going. And this is where I see myself, playing a part in other people's lives and supporting. But through that journey, I learned later on, the effects of having imposter syndrome. Coming closer to my finishing up my doctorate, I started thinking like, okay, now what do I do next? Like I've done this big accomplishment, it's about to come to the end, and now what's next? And I had to learn to, reach out and have my own coach, have my own mentors, have some accountability partners. And then linking up with, two psychologists as a husband and wife who supported. And I joined, one of their courses just around imposter syndrome, and just making sure that I understood that what I have to give to people is exactly what I'm meant to do. So I think the biggest challenge is learning to reflect on on your own self and reflect on myself. And I've given a lot in the field and given a lot to my students and adults. But I also too have to make sure I self-reflect. So, the last couple of years of finishing my dissertation, I did a lot of reflecting again, because I was doing so much social emotional learning with students. I had to start doing the same thing for myself, and being more self-aware of my purpose, and building those better, building better business relationships. And making the best decisions for myself. So I think for me, the biggest challenge was acknowledging the imposter syndrome, and getting the support that I needed to get in order to step out, on faith, and step out to say, like, I have a lot to give, and now it's time for the next level in my career.
Yeah, and I what you're saying about that imposter syndrome, I think being transparent and like you were saying, yeah, it's really good, and it's good for others too that they see you being transparent in that. So that's a been
Yeah.
there. We know. All right. So, what is one thing you wish you had known earlier in your career?
I think that there were so many opportunities to have a degree in psychology. I think when I first came, into the field, and having an undergrad, I thought it was just one way of using a degree in mental health, or one way of using it in the education system. And then as I saw, like, I did the private, mental health practice, I did the counseling in schools, again, the direct service, doing, education consulting with, school districts, or doing educational consulting with community organizations. I just realized that, when I decided to get the PhD in psychology, that I could use it in, in any field, whether it's education, again, the importance of the, like I said, the big piece of the emotional intelligence, it could be in any business. It could be in a corporate organization, it could be in a nonprofit, it could be in a school district. We often we forget, because we're so busy around the technical skills and what people bring to the table. But we got to make sure we're taking care of our people, and we have to make sure, we're taking care of them, and addressing their needs, as it pertains to the personal and emotional side of what they need. And then maybe, it could help prevent a lot of, turnover, and, we can, keep our staff on board, because again, we have to acknowledge that those are things that they need as individuals. And of course, now with COVID, it's even more, us dealing with the emotions, right? And people being nervous about returning back to work, and how they're going to, live day by day and do what they do. Our emotions are really high. So it's just been really important, like, even to, to the advantage of being able to use my social media and connecting with people about, like, how do we have healthy practices as we have to deal with this whole pandemic.
Yeah. Thinking about you said you have over 20 years of experience.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone wanting to pursue a career path similar to yours?
So for me, in my career, I had supervisors and had, colleagues that, just we were really just strong teams. We brought the best that we could bring to the table. But I think that sometimes, in my experience, you kind of just get thrown into the fire, is what we say, right? And you kind of figure it out as you go. So I would suggest to anybody coming into this field is just making sure that you're connecting with, organizations, such as, the Black Doctorals Network, connecting with different organizations within, the universities, or, organizations in their communities, and getting yourself a mentor that's been in the field. They can kind of guide you and point you in the right direction, help you do some goal setting and getting some, just getting some coaching and some support just around your career goals and where you see yourself. I think early on, I was just trying to figure it out. Originally, I went into Temple thinking I was going to be a physical therapist. I got to a psychology class and was like, no, this is where I need to be. But again, it was like just filling my way. And, I've always stayed in my jobs for long terms. But after a while, it's like once you master the skill, it's like, OK, what do I need to do next? So I do think it's important to network, to, be a part of organizations that's in your field, as well as, getting a mentor that can support you and guide you.
Wow. What skills would you say have helped you to be most successful?
So obviously having strong communication skills, listening skills, just in the field, I've always had to listen, to people's needs and not put my own needs or my own judgment on anything that they wanted to do, but at least guide them in the way that they'll be most supported in their own lives. I just definitely having good research and writing skills, being able to research on things that are pertinent to the field and pertinent to what I was doing on a day to day, and being able to analyze those things in order to best support. And definitely, just building my emotional intelligence skills as well as my leadership skills. For a long time as a leader, in many positions, it was like, okay, I'll just do it. Somebody didn't do it right. And then I had to learn to delegate and learn to, lean on my staff and learn to say to them that you have leadership qualities in you. You may not be the director, you may not be the supervisor, but everybody brings something to the table. So for me, it's always leveraging those skills in my staff. So again, it's again being emotionally intelligent and being aware of who you're leading, and then also building leaders in those individuals as well. So I think those are some key skills that has gotten me thus far.
Yeah, that's really powerful how you said to build the skills in others, because sometimes
Mhm.
I think that's what people overlook. As you
Yes.
said, doing it all yourself,
Yes.
that's not going to work, right? And what are you most proud of in your career? Looking back, what makes you smile? What are you proud of? Most proud of?
I think most proud of is just me being able to turn my passion into a career path. Like I said, as a young person, my mother always taught us, and our family just always was embedded in the community. Like, no one could ever, come in and just say this is what they want. Like as a community, we always spoke up, and that's just was something that we was always, taught to do. So I think for me, it was just being able to turn my passion into helping people professionally and personally, to turn this into a career path, and again, being able to leverage my education and my experience, work experiences, leadership experiences, to now be able to start a consulting firm that can now help other people. Like I said, the journey of, going to school and moving on to post-secondary education and all the way up to, a PhD or a doctorate degree, it's a life changing experience. And it allows you to get in rooms and get in front of people that you may have never envisioned yourself being in front of. But I just think it's important that I just been most proud of being able to leverage the experiences I've had to be able to inform and support other people, but to also finally do something that is dear to my heart, and I can speak from experience, but also to can help others be able to lead.
Wow. So, as we wind down our interview, I just want to ask you some questions about what keeps you engaged in your work. So, who or what rather inspires you?
So, my parents have always inspired me to do the right thing and to lead by example. No matter what. Despite like I said, my father being incarcerated, he's always still made sure we instill the right things, and circumstances happen and landed him there. But my family, my loved ones, my significant other, like he's very supportive as well. But for me, what inspires me is the daily work, being able to still engage with young people, still being able to, work with school districts that support students. I'm all about student rights and, parents having rights and holding principals and staff accountable, because at the end of the day, our young people are what we need to make sure that we're supporting in our communities. So for me, my day-to-day work and being able to interact with people every day is what inspires me. So yes, that's the day to day. peace for me is to be inspired by the people that need us and maybe not be able to advocate for themselves. I'm a strong advocate of that. So yes.
How do you define success?
Wow. So, success for me, it's been a life journey. For me, it's an ongoing journey. I think that every day we get an opportunity to be successful in everything that we do or have been chosen to do. So, I just don't think that we can do one thing and say, okay, I made it, I'm successful. I just think it's a life journey that every day we get an opportunity to be successful at something. And we should be proud of the things that we've been able to accomplish. So, goal setting is important, but we set goals for ourselves and we hit that targeted outcome. But for me, success is about the life experience.
Wow, I like that what you said, been chosen to do. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't.
I think oftentimes I was trying to, say, okay, this is what I want to do. And, after a while, I just had to kind of sit back and, I pray, I meditate, I fast, and that is the opportunity for me to just listen and hear. Like it may be everything I want to do, but our mission and purpose is what we're supposed to be doing. And sometimes it's not what we think. It's what, God has put in front of us. You just got to listen.
That's really powerful. Wow. So, how has your affiliation with the Black Doctoral Network helped you personally and or professionally?
So I want to be honest, like I had been trying to come to the conference for 2 years, and every time I tried, something got in the way, or I had to go, do something for work, or couldn't get there. And right when I finished and I received my doctoral degree, the Black Doctoral Network put out a request for proposals, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna try this, right? I'm gonna bet on myself, and I prayed about it. And God said, Deanna, go ahead. And I submitted my abstract and got picked. And I couldn't believe it at first. And then I was just like, wow, like this is a topic that again we hear. It was around social emotional learning, so I presented my dissertation research. And again, we always hear from the adult, but to hear it from the lens of youth and young people was very important to me. So to be able to even be a presenter was a great opportunity. And then I received the email asking me to moderate my session. So it really put me on spot, right? Even as we are talking about like imposter syndrome. I had to reflect and say, Deanna, like I wouldn't be asked to do this if I can't. So my mentors and coaches was like, Deanna, go for it. And I just am so grateful for the opportunity to be able to be affiliated and, even being contacted for today's podcast has really been inspirational. I've been able to connect with other people within the network, whether it's through social media or just, through the different events that they've had. So I am very grateful to be a part of the Black Doctoral Network, and it definitely has given me the opportunity to get on a platform to speak about what's passionate, what's a passion of mine, and what's dear to my heart. So I'm very grateful to be here today. So I hope to continue to be connected and continue to push anything that they're doing. I'm a strong advocate of us having a network such as this to now, obviously leverage in ways that I didn't think about leveraging before, and taking the opportunities when they come, but also to exposing other people to the network as well.
Yeah, I've been to a couple conferences, and I've been to several different conferences, but there's a different kind of feel.
It is. Because
To-
sometimes, like I said, for a long time, I didn't go to a HBCU. So a lot, again, a lot of my colleagues are not necessarily African American psychologists. So when you hear that, and when you could be in a room full of doctors that look like you and understand the work from our perspective, it's a great experience.
yeah, it's like being home in a sense.
Yes.
All right. So for my final question, I'm truly inspired by your story, everything from beginning to end, from how your childhood has kind of molded you and you've moved along on this path. What's next for you?
So again, I'm very passionate about building my company, building my brand as it relates to emotional intelligence, because I think it's really important. And as I continue to do research and read on the topic, like a lot of companies now are looking for those skills in individuals that they hire, just because we're just in a different time. So we have to be more compassionate about those needs as well. And obviously, just finding more opportunities to do social and organizational research to help, individuals advance personally and professionally.
All right. Well, I am so appreciative of this opportunity to speak with you today.
I am so appreciative to be speaking with you as well, Dr. West. Thank you so much.
So, thank you for joining us today. It has truly been a pleasure. Please tell our viewers and listeners where they can go to learn more about you and the work you're doing.
So they can follow me on social media. I am on Instagram at BCG_LLC. That's on Instagram. That's the best way to get in contact with me. And if they want one-on-one coaching, then I can support, or they're looking for something in regards to organizational, emotional intelligence, they can connect with me there, and follow my feed. I usually post a lot of great things just around emotional intelligence and how we leverage those as individuals and professionals. So again, at BCG_LLC. That's on Instagram.
Fabulous. So please be sure to stay connected to the Black Doctoral Network and connect with us on all of our social media channels. Thank you for joining us today for the Black Doctors Talk podcast. We hope you will join us next time. But for now, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and definitely tell a friend.